How many of you have gotten some kind of shot or vaccine in your lifetime? If you're sitting there thinking none, then think again. Because in order to attend any public school or even the university you're currently sitting in, everyone is required by the government to get certain vaccinations before they enter school. As with anything that one might put in their own bodies, ranging from over-the-counter medications to certain foods to vaccinations, they all come with the risk of certain symptoms or negative effects. In regard to vaccines, a major controversy about whether or not they cause autism still persists. A great majority of the data collected today points to the fact that vaccines are an essential piece to the public's health and that they do not cause autism. What is autism? As defined by the Autism Speaks organization, quote, autism or autism spectrum disorder refers to a range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. In order to gain a better overall perspective as to why this controversy occurred, let's look a little bit closer at what vaccines are and their history. The idea of vaccinations date back hundreds of years, but the first recognized vaccine in the West was created by an English physician and scientist, Edward Jenner, in 1796. He is known to be the founder of vaccinology. He began his quest in vaccines by inoculating a 13-year-old boy with cowpox virus, resulting in the child becoming immune to smallpox. It wasn't until 2 years later that the world's first smallpox vaccine was actually created, which led to a total eradication of smallpox globally. As time went on, more vaccines were produced, and more studies and data were accumulated regarding vaccines. One of these was a study done by British gastroenterologist Andrew Wakefield. His study was published in a well-known paper titled The Lancet. His study consisted of 8 children who showed signs of autism within a month of getting the MMR or measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination. Through his observations, Wakefield stated the claim that the MMR vaccine resulted in intestinal inflammation in these children and an increase of certain peptides in the bloodstream, and thus later resulting in effects to brain development or autism. This study was later found to be false and misleading for multiple reasons, including the very small sample size, that it wasn't evidence-based, and that there was no control group in this study. But damage had already been done as a result, because this false study sparked the controversy in parents especially that vaccines were not safe and thus caused autism, resulting in an increased apprehension about giving their child vaccinations. But there have been many credible studies done in the past few years to prove this to be false. We are going to be sticking to the side of the argument stating that vaccines are not a cause of autism in children. There were many specific cases discussed in the book titled Immunization and Safety Review, Autism and Vaccines that help to support the claim that vaccines do not cause autism in children. The authors of this book were a part of the Institute of Medicine, which focuses to provide the public with advice in relation to topics such as health, medicine, and biomedical science, with an overall goal to use informational evidence to help improve the nation's health overall. This study used what is known as an odds ratio to show the relationship of the MMR vaccine resulting in autism or other diseases. An odds ratio is a way to measure the association of the exposure to a certain disease and an outcome. So the greater that the ratio outcome is than 1 means a decrease in the association. One specific data finding was when the MMR vaccine was given, which resulted in a mumps odds ratio of 3.33, and the odds ratio for other non-mumps disorders was 8. What does this all really mean? This means that the data showed a far greater chance of someone getting mumps as a result of getting this vaccine rather than other disorders like autism. So the end conclusion from the study was that there is not a correlation between the MMR vaccine and autism in children. Another reason as to why it is believed that vaccines do not cause autism is because of the biological component behind this disorder. In the journal article titled Measles, Mumps, Rubella Vaccine Does Not Cause Autism, the authors looked closer at the genetic or biological component of autism. There were many authors who contributed to this article, all of whom were part of the Pediatrics and Child Health Division of the Royal Australasian College of Physicians. This medical college is made up of over 15,000 physicians and 7,500 trainees from places like Australia and New Zealand. They work to advocate for specific healthcare policies in the interest of the community and patients, innovate learning and change, and educate physicians and specialists to further their knowledge and understanding. They've been around since the 1930s and have worked with various journals such as the Journal of Pediatrics and Child Health in order to spread the various findings of their physicians. In this journal article, the group of physicians began looking at the genetic component behind vaccinations and the fact that parents with one autistic child already are delaying giving the MMR vaccine to their youngest child. They did this by studying the rate of autism in younger siblings who had an older autistic sibling and comparing different sibling groups who had gotten the MMR vaccine or not through a healthcare database. So the results from the study showed that children who had an older sibling with autism were shown to have a decreased likelihood of getting the MMR vaccine on time at age 2, in comparison to children with no autistic siblings, the numbers being 73% and 84% of children who got the vaccine at age 2, showing that there is no association between the vaccine and autism, as these children are already getting the vaccine later in life after children usually develop this disorder. On the other side of the controversy, some people have come to believe that a mercury-based preservative in vaccines known as thimerosal may be a cause or trigger for autism spectrum disorder in their children. A study done by Columbia University in 2004 helped to back up this suspicion. A report of the study done by Columbia University stated that the thimerosal preservative, when injected into mice, triggered autism-like symptoms. The particular mice that were being used were, quote, genetically susceptible to autoimmune disorders, as are many autistic children, end quote. While there is much more data that could be generated on this preservative, it concludes by showing people how high mercury levels in this preservative could be contributing to the rise of autism or problems in children. But it's important to note that while the mercury-based preservative was used in vaccines for over 70 years, it has been removed from all childhood vaccines since 1999 and can be found in very small traces in other vaccines, such as the flu vaccine. But it is also important to look at the fact that according to the National Institute of Health, autism rates have increased from about, quote, 1 in every 2,500 births in the 1960s to 1 out of every 500 today. So the rise in autism rates over the past few years cannot be solely correlated with vaccines, when the only somewhat harmful ingredient, thimerosal, has been removed. This rise has been more closely correlated with the broadened definition of autism, which now includes a combination of disorders ranging from ADHD and OCD, which weren't in the definition before. To recap, it's important to remember that from various studies, we've been able to see how genetics can have a larger role in children getting autism, as well as through odds ratios of what people are more at risk for, such as getting the infectious disease that the vaccine is being used to protect the person against. It is also important to note that yes, autism rates in children have gone up in the past few years, but a major reason for this is because of the ever-changing definition of autism, with various other disorders being characterized underneath this broad term of autism spectrum disorder. As for the thimerosal preservative, it has been removed from all childhood vaccines. It's also important to keep in mind the importance of vaccines in eradicating diseases such as smallpox and keeping the world healthy. One question that I would like everyone to keep in mind is, are vaccines really a cause of autism?